Today's special guest, one of the greatest executives the NHL has seen, Jimmy Devellano, winner of 7 Stanley Cups, a Hall of Famer. Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show, coming up.
All right, today's special guest, we're so glad to have him on. He was born in Toronto. He grew up in Scarborough and Cabbagetown. He is a former amateur scout for the St. Louis Blues, the Eastern Canadian scout for the New York Islanders, assistant general manager with the Islanders, the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings, senior vice president of the Red Wings, part of 7 Stanley Cup wins with the Islanders and the Wings. He was a former senior vice president of the Detroit Tigers. He is a member of the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame, a member of the Hockey Hall of Fame since 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Devellano. Great to have you on the show, Jimmy. Welcome.
Good to be with you, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always good to see you, my friend. It was great to see you at the Hockey Hall of Fame. You know, I recently finished reading the book that you wrote along with Roger Lajoie, The Road to Hockey Town, Jimmy Devellano's 40 years in the NHL. Well, it's 50 now. It was written a while back with our old pal Roger. A wonderful, honest, open book. Really enjoyed it. And so learn a lot about Jimmy D. And I want to talk a little bit about those early years because the fact that you got to where you got from where you came from, it's quite a long road to hoe. But tell me, what was it like in those early years for you?
Well, going back, my gosh, it's 55 years. I was a 24-year-old young guy in Toronto doing some coaching in the THL, going to a lot of hockey games. Hockey was my life, and the league had just expanded, the NHL from 6 to 12 teams, and I decided to write Lynn Patrick, who's the general manager of the new St. Louis Blues, a letter offering to scout for him in the Toronto area free of charge. What I was trying to do, Joe, was basically get my foot in the door. He accepted my offer, and here I am now 55 years later, still in the league. And I think the thing that I'm most proud of is the fact that, 55 years continuously in the NHL, but only for 3 teams: the St. Louis Blues, the New York Islanders, and the Detroit Red Wings. That's hard to do, Joe, in a volatile business like hockey. So I'm very proud that I've been able to spend a lot of time at just 3 different teams. And of course, when I say 55 years in the league, the last 40 have been with the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, that's a pretty good run, and there are some good reasons for that, for the length of that run and why that happened. Getting back to the Blues, now you left the Blues after because of some philosophical differences. Let's say Lynn Patrick
Correct.
though had some. Well, first of all, it wasn't long that you weren't working for free, and later on, you definitely weren't working for free. Things worked out pretty financially for Jimmy D as time went on. But you talked about Lynn Patrick, and he said to you that everything happens for a reason, and he also said there's always a silver lining in everything that takes place. Tell us a little bit about those words of wisdom.
Yeah. Well, I was working for a gentleman as a scout for the St. Louis Blues. I was just getting my feet wet, and for whatever reason, he had a disconnect with me. I to this day, I don't know the reason, but he decided he'd let me go. It was pretty devastating. I was 29 years old. I had really worked hard and done a good job, so it was a bit more of a personality conflict. But Lynn Patrick did reach out to me. In fairness to him, he had to pretty much go along with this gentleman because he was his head scout. But I think he was a little disappointed at what happened, and he just wanted to give me a little boost and say, Jimmy, everything happens for a reason, and sometimes it turns out to work for the best. And in my case, it sure did, because I was only out of work 1 month, July of 1972, and then a new expansion team came in, the New York Islanders, and I would wind up getting a promotion there and actually making $1,000 more than I did with the St. Louis Blues. So it's funny how things turn out. And of course, the Islanders would set my career ablaze, because the general manager there, Bill Torrey, really, unlike in St. Louis, really allowed me to grow, to flap my wings, to have a lot of say, put me in charge of his farm team in Indianapolis. I did all their scouting, put their drafts together, and got better at it just because I worked hard, and through experience and finding out what works, what doesn't work, as you try to pick young players that are eventually going to make the NHL.
Well, I want to talk about the draft, in with the Islanders, because that was pretty good. But I think the transition here is you learned what it was like when you had a hands-on owner who was interfering a lot versus what happens when you allow somebody to run your franchise for you, who knows what they're doing, as the Islanders did with Torrey, and what a difference that made. It took the Blues 50 years to win a Stanley Cup, even though they got to the Cup a couple of times right off the hop because of some good fortune and everything else. But to become a really the solid franchise that the Islanders took them a long time to get there. But I want to talk about the draft that you had with the Islanders. So how's this? Okay, so you had the really bad first year, and as a result of that, 30 points in that first year, you get to draft a guy named Dennis Potvin. Worked out pretty good, right? Then you got he wins the Calder Trophy. Then Brian Trottier, he wins the Calder Trophy. Mike Bossy wins the Calder Trophy. Now these are three guys. One's from Ontario, one's from the Western League, and one's from the Quebec League. Obviously, you and the scouts were doing a fantastic job scouting these guys out, picking these guys in the first round, and look what happened to them all.
Well, you're right. It's very unusual to have three Calder Trophy winners in what, a 7 or 8 year period, quite frankly. Now, to be very fair, Dennis Potvin was a no-brainer. We finished dead
Right.
last in our expansion year, and he was a consensus number one, so a little hard to take any credit, but boy, he turned out to be a franchise player for sure, and really got the Islanders up and running. Trottier and Bossy were a lot different. Trottier was taken in the second round. Now, the reason he was taken in the second round was because at the time we were drafting, it was a 20-year-old draft. The World Hockey Association came in 1974, and they started to poach 18-year-olds, 7 or 8 of the very best 18-year-olds. So they got in ahead of the NHL. And so because of that, the NHL reacted quickly, and in 1974 said, all right, in order to counteract the WHA, we'll allow you to take one 18-year-old in the first or second round. So we had the 4th pick in 1974, and the first round guy just passed away very sadly a couple of weeks ago, Clark Gillies from the Regina Pats. And he was pretty much a consensus high draft pick. So again, I would be remiss in taking a lot of credit at 4th overall. Gillies, I think most people would have taken him there. But we had a bird dog out west in Swift Current, and he kept talking to me all year about this young 18-year-old kid, young Indian kid, playing for Swift Current with 2 years of junior to go, but what his potential was, what his upside was, and his name was Brian Trottier. So we took a chance. We took Brian Trottier in the second round. And, Joe, if you think about getting a Potvin and then the next year you get a Clark Gillies and you get a Brian Trottier, and our bird dog in Swift Current was bang on about Trottier. A little bit of a gamble at that point in time. But boy, oh boy, here we are 3 years into the league, and we've gone from last place to becoming a pretty good playoff team, not a Stanley Cup team, but a pretty good team. So that was a heck of a haul for us.
Well, you had some good playoff runs, a couple of surprises early on, but then, but then there were some tough times. You had the upset against Toronto, you had the upset against the Rangers, and at that time, I'm thinking that ownership might be getting a little antsy here, might be wondering if they're doing the right things. But they tell me what happened at that particular time for you guys.
Yeah, well, it was early in our existence. By the third year, we'd made the playoffs and actually upset a real good New York Ranger team in a very short 3-game series. It was 2 out of 3, and we actually upset them. So we had a pretty good start. But what happens when you do that, and I've seen that in Detroit, I see it even with today's Toronto Maple Leafs, if I might add, once you have a little bit of success in the regular season, it ups unfairly expectations. Okay, it really, really does. And then when you lose in the first round of the playoffs, everybody says, what happened? And so we had a little bit of that with the New York Islanders, but we were a 100-point team by year 5, 6, 7. Yeah, the Leafs did upset us in a 7-game series. We got upset another year by the Rangers, but by year 8, and by this time now we had Mike Bossy. We'd made some trades to shore up our toughness a little bit. We were able to then win the Stanley Cup in our 8th year, our 9th year, our 10th year, and our 11th year. And the team would go on, the Islanders, to win 19 consecutive playoff series. 19. And that's a record that'll never be broken again. Never. I want to put 19 consecutive series wins in perspective. So I've been in Detroit for 40 years, and there was a period of time when we had a powerhouse team and a run, not quite like the Islanders, but a little below the Islanders. We won back-to-back cups in 97, 98. So that was 8 consecutive series wins. We're going for a three-peat. We win 1 round and we're out. That's 9 straight series wins for a pretty darn good Detroit team. And we would go on, of course, to win 2 more cups after that, but not back-to-back like the Islanders. So in my 40 years with Detroit, the best we could do would be 9 consecutive playoff series won. And you see how almost every year now in this league, another team wins the Stanley Cup. Now, the Tampa Bay Lightning, a very, very good team, are probably the first team in over 40 years to maybe have a chance to three-peat. So you can see how hard it is in today's NHL. So I bring up 19 straight playoff series as something that the Islanders will never forget.
Yeah, I know for certain it was not as easy as it seemed at the time from our standpoint watching it. But you did touch on the Maple Leafs, and we got a high percentage of our viewers are from Southern Ontario and are Leaf fans, of course. Now, what can the Leafs learn from what the Islanders went through? There were those years where they had some upsets, and then there were some years that they were supposed to win and didn't. And of course, the Leafs have held these first round knockouts back to back to back to back to back, and it's frustrating and it's hard. What do you think the players have learned from that? And do you see this as something that you can look at as a positive sign?
Well, having been a part of building two teams like the Islanders and the Red Wings, we both, the Islanders and Red Wings, had the same thing happen to us that's happening and has happened to the Maple Leafs. And that is, we built good teams that were real good in the regular season, both the Islanders and the Red Wings. And I don't forget, prior to us winning our first Stanley Cup in '97, we'd been upset 3 times prior to that when we thought, and most fans and media thought, that we should have been winning the Stanley Cup. So that's what I mean about raised expectations. I think with both the Islanders and we learned in Detroit, nothing changed. There's a certain style of play in the playoffs that changes the game. It gets tighter, the intensity gets revved up. You have to have top of the line goaltending. And those were the things, both on the island and in Detroit, that we tried to, we kind of learned from it, Joe. We tried to improve in those areas. Now, what I would say to you, Brendan Shanahan, who played for me in Detroit, knows all about these types of things. He knows what it takes to win. He knows the type of player that you need. He knows about playoff hockey because he was involved. He saw it firsthand. As a matter of fact, Brendan might have been the final piece that we acquired in Detroit to get us over the hump in the playoffs. So he understands. The problem sometimes remains is things are a little different now. There's a salary cap in vogue. The Islanders and the Red Wings were not confronted with the salary cap. So we would be able to make trades where money, I don't know how to put it, was no object. In other words, we could spend as much as our owners would allow us to spend to win. That is no longer the case in the NHL. So trust me when I tell you that Brendan Shanahan and I'll add Kyle Dubas. I don't know Kyle too well personally, but impressed with the young man. They know what they need. They know what it takes. They know that they're reasonably close. They know that they haven't gotten over the hump, but unfortunately, with a salary cap, when you have good players, and the Leafs have good players, and Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, and a few others, you're strung up against a salary cap. So to think at the deadline you're going to go and get what you feel is needed, generally that is not possible. So you have to kind of live with what you've got, cross your fingers and toes, and hope that it finally works.
Well, I think that I think part of the learning curve is, it seems to me, and you've gone through it a number of times, is learning that when you lose, it can do one of the two things. Like, it can give up, or it can give you that determination to come back even stronger. And I think I think that's probably what you witnessed. Is that correct?
Well, yes. And you know what, to the Leafs' credit, I watched their game last night with Carolina on TV, and boy, there's 2 good teams, very, very talented teams. Each one of those teams I would put in a situation that could possibly compete for the Stanley Cup. And, you know, the
Mhm.
Leafs came through. I mean, they've got a high-powered offense. The Marners, the Matthews, the Nylanders. You can throw in John Tavares, Morgan Riley. These are pretty good hockey players. Leaf fans they're fortunate. They're watching a talented team. But again, come playoff time, the checking gets much tighter. And sometimes we found it even with the Yzermans and the Fedorovs, they could get shut down in a short series in the playoffs. And that's always the fear, you know. But, you know, obviously they hope that maybe they can become that type of team, be a better all-round checking team so that they can get through at least a few rounds in the playoffs. So I'm sure that's what they're trying to accomplish.
Well, 3 years, three straight Stanley Cups. After three straight Stanley Cups with the Islanders, you got an opportunity with the Red Wings. And tell us about what happened for you and how that came about. And again, you're moving from a situation where you've got, you know, an owner who lets the people who know what they're doing run the hockey club, and that's exactly what happened when you moved to Detroit. Tell us a little bit about that, how that transpired for you.
Well, after 10 years with the New York Islanders as their director of scouting and their assistant general manager with 3 Stanley Cups, I would tell you at that point in time, I was the flavor of the day in order to get a general manager's job as they would become open. Now, back then, it was a 21 team league. It just so happened that in 1982, the people that owned the Detroit Red Wings, the Norris family, had decided to sell the team. They had had a pretty tough 20 years. The team had fallen on hard times. Things were out of whack there, unfortunately for them. And they sold the team to Mike and Marion Ilitch, local Detroiters who had built a Little Caesars Pizza empire. And but they were pizza people. They were entrepreneurs, had been Red Wings season ticket holders, suite holders, and here was their opportunity to actually purchase the team. But they needed somebody to come in and run it, somebody that had experience, that had a track record, and after interviewing some real good people, for whatever reason, they chose me. So in July of 1982, I arrived at Joe Louis Arena to become their first general manager. And I can remember Joe telling my relatives and friends, geez, if I can stay here for 10 years, boy, that'll be quite a career. And here I am now, 40 years in. And while I'm not their general manager, I've been with them the entire time and continue to be with them. So that was quite surprising. But anyways, they hired me, and the team was not very good, to put it quite politely. And it took a long time. We got lucky right off the bat in my first draft in '83. We got lucky. We had the 4th pick, and we backed into Steve Yzerman. And you might say, how did you get lucky, and what do you mean by backing in? Well, the truth be told, the player we really wanted was Pat LaFontaine. Okay. And the reason we wanted him was because he was a local Detroit boy and we needed to sell tickets. Okay. And as juniors, they were both very, very equal players, LaFontaine and Yzerman. And the proof is in the pudding, in the respect that Pat LaFontaine is in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Steve Yzerman's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Now, as history would show it, uh, LaFontaine went 3. We got Yzerman at 4. Well, as history would show it, sometimes it's better to be lucky than to be smart. And we got lucky. We backed into him. And, everybody knows the history of Steve Yzerman, and now doing a terrific job 35 years later as manager of the team after a big 22-year playing career. So that kind of got our team from being really bad to somewhat maybe respectable. We were in a kind of a lousy division in the 80s, the Norris division. And, my friends in Toronto, their team wasn't great. The Leafs in the 80s were not good. The Red Wings were not good. And Chicago and the North Stars weren't all that good. So we were able to kind of muddle and make the playoffs, but nowhere near a Stanley Cup team. It wouldn't be until the draft of '89 when we drafted two, superstars, unbeknown to us at the time, that the team then, with Yzerman and a few trades that we made, I mentioned Shanahan, we would take the next step and become a competitor for the Stanley Cup.
Well, yeah, the draft was big. I just want to go back to that July of '82 moment when here you go, you're named the general manager of an original six club, and here you are, a kid from Toronto who quit school. I believe it was grade 9 because of an algebra issue.
Yeah, you got
Which,
that right. Imagine 3 out of 100 in algebra. And Joe, who the hell uses algebra anyways? But anyways, that's right. I'm a grade 9 dropout, right? Yeah.
That's an unbelievable story in itself. The fact that you. But what because you talk about your first ever draft, and it turned out to be Steve Yzerman. They held a tribute for Steve Yzerman, and we do have a clip from you on that evening. Vic, can we roll that?
I vowed to rebuild the team through the draft, and that promise began to take shape on June the 8th, 1983, at the Montreal Forum, when, with our very first pick, 4th overall, we selected a young 18-year-old forward from the Peterborough Petes of the Ontario Hockey League named Steve Yzerman. We promised that we would build a team around him and that he would become the cornerstone of this once proud franchise. We knew he was good, but oh, what a cornerstone he turned out to be.
So now Steve Yzerman comes along and things start getting a little better. Peter Klima you draft as well.
Correct.
You had a couple of pretty good years in Detroit, and then made a couple of deals that weren't so good. But in 83, 84, this is one of your. I'm going to get back to the other stuff in just a minute. But 83, 84, you made the playoffs. You did better than most people expected. This has been some pretty significant improvement pretty quick. We have a clip with you being interviewed by former Red Wings great Sid Abel, who was working for the broadcast team at that time, and just before the trade deadline, 83, 84. Let's listen to this. This is some good stuff.
We think there are 6 or 7 pretty good players out there, and our scouts and myself were concentrating on those 6 players, and then all of a sudden, about 3 weeks ago, our team took off, and all of a sudden, when I look at the standings, it looks like we could draft as high as 9th or 10th. That's assuming that we would be able to continue where we are. And so we've had to expand our list and go out and look at players further down our list. And of course, that's the thing about the draft, Sid, that the lower you finish, the better pick you usually get. So we have to hope we can make the playoffs and get another good draft choice to move in here next year.
Some good memories for you, I'm sure. So
Yes.
But then, so then the draft prospects get a little better, unfortunately, because in 85, 86, you get a 40-point season. On this stage, this has got to be the low point for you, right? I mean, you're wondering if you're going to be back with the Red Wings at this point. But what happened?
No question about it. It was devastating, and I was hanging by a thread. No question about that.
But instead of getting fired, you get a contract extension.
Right, exactly. Well, in all fairness, I think Mike and Marian Illich uh, saw that we had made some initial improvement, but we needed more, Joe. And things aren't easy when you're trying to build. And I think they believed in me because they thought that if given enough time, I would draft the team out of trouble. They knew my track record. We did get off to a good start with drafting, and they didn't want to just pull the trigger like some teams do, change their general manager every time they have one bad year. And so they decided to stick with me, and I'm glad they did, obviously. And you know what? In the end, the proof was in the pudding. It worked out for me, for them, the Detroit Red Wings.
And drafting was no doubt about it your specialty. You touched on we saw 83 draft, which was unbelievable. Then you touched on the 89 draft, but I just want to talk about the names of the people you drafted in 89. Mike Sillinger, Bob Bugner, who both had extensive NHL careers. Nick Lidstrom, who wasn't too shabby, I believe, for a fourth or fifth rounder. I can't remember what exactly the round. Sergei
Third
Fedorov,
round.
Dallas Drake, third round. Yeah, there you go. Third round pick, Nick Lidstrom. Sergei Fedorov, Dallas Drake, and Vladimir Konstantinov. Now that, I don't know if there's ever been a better draft year than that,
Joe,
collection than that.
Joe, let me interject here. Not to brag, it's just factual. Sports Illustrated looked for the best drafts in the four major leagues: the NFL, MLB, NBA, and the NHL. Not my conclusion. Their conclusion was that is the best amateur draft in the North American history of sports. You know, Mike Sillinger, our first round pick, played over 1,000 games. Second round, Bob Bugner played over 600 NHL games. Nick Lidstrom, third round, won 7 Norris trophies and played 20 years. Fourth round, Sergei Fedorov. You know what Sergei Fedorov was. He was a superstar. And then in late rounds, Dallas Drake played 1,000 games. He was like 6th, 7th round. Vladimir Konstantinov in the 10th round. You know what kind of player he was and what he would have been without that tragic accident. Did we know that was happening in 1989 when I presided over that draft? No, we didn't know, but it happened, and it turned the Red Wings' fortunes right around. And those are the main reasons why we were able to go 25 years in a row making the playoffs with 4 cups, 2 other times to the Stanley Cup finals. About 16 times we won our division, 8 or 9 times to the conference finals. And it was really on the backs of that 89 draft, coupled with Steve Yzerman already there.
And coming around and maturing. Yeah, that was brilliant, brilliant. So, but it took a little while for it to come together, despite all that talent. Now, you guys needed a coach. Mike Ilitch wanted to go with Mike Keenan, but you were convinced that you should head in another direction. And you ended up reaching out to Scotty Bowman. Now, we had the legend himself on the show a few months back, and you guys had some history before he met the Ilitches. Let's play that clip, Vic.
Jimmy Devellano phoned me, Joe. He phoned me and said, "We're making a coaching change in Detroit. We want to win. What would it take to get you to come to Detroit?" And I knew Jimmy from a long time, and I said, "Well, let's talk." So I interviewed with he and Mike and Marion Illich. I came with my family, brought us all down. We went down to Florida. It was a summer night. Went down there for the day. After about 10 minutes, I knew I wanted to go to Detroit. And we never even signed a contract. He just said to me, I want you to come here for a couple of years. He said, you can stay with us the rest of your career.
And things worked out
All very
okay.
true. Yeah, it did.
So now you guys went about the business of signing and getting the Russian five. Two of them, I think you drafted three and acquired the other two of them, if I'm not mistaken. And you were able to get three of them to defect. Like, what was the key to making that happen, to getting those Russian five with the Red Wings?
Well, you're right. The first three we drafted a young fella by the name of Slava Kozlov, a really talented young winger. We drafted Sergei Fedorov and Vladimir Konstantinov. So three were drafts. Two would have been superstars. I mean, Konstantinov would have been. Fedorov wasn't. Kozlov was well above average player. So Scotty inherited those players when he came, but he convinced me, and he did have to convince me because of their age, that he wanted to acquire two guys in their higher 30s by the name of Igor Larionov and Slava Fetisov. And, you have to give up draft picks, you have to give up assets to get them. And they were, 35, 36 years old. And, I sort of said, Scotty, we're giving up a little bit of future here to pick up these players. But he said, Jimmy, we have to try to win now. That's why I was brought in, which was true. And he said, you've had a long future here, but sometimes the future never comes if you're continuing to build for the future. I think those three young Russians need two veteran Russians to help me coach them, basically. And we did what Scotty asked us to do. We gave up a third round pick to New Jersey for Fetisov, and we traded Ray Shepard, a much younger player, to San Jose for Larionov. And Scotty Bowman was bang on. It worked, and we were able to win cups. And so sometimes you see the value of other people's opinions, teamwork, and Scotty's philosophy. Jimmy, I'm not here for the future. I'm over 60. I was brought in to win. That's what I think we need. So we acquiesced, and he was correct.
Well, that's that again. I want to get back to it's allowing people to do their jobs and working as a team and listening to each other. But at the prevailing thought at that time, though, was that in order to win a Stanley Cup, you had to do it with, if not Canadian, North American players. You can never have a lot of European players and win a Stanley Cup. It's just never been done before. Obviously, nobody's saying that anymore.
No, you're right. They're not. But somebody has to be the first team to do it, and we were the first team to do it. And people did say those things. I'm not sure at a point years prior that I might have thought that way, because we were brought up to think that North Americans were the best, and they were. But I also realized a little quicker than some that there were really, really, really talented players in Russia and Czechoslovakia. And that's certainly, we got a jump on a lot of teams because we were the first into Europe.
Right, and all over Europe too, like Johan France. I mean, you guys were everywhere. I mean, and it was great. So okay, now so 97, it finally pays off. And you talked about adding Brendan Shanahan and Larry Murphy, who, for whatever reason, Murphy was uh, like just lost in Toronto. People just they were so hard on Larry Murphy. I remember those days. It was just terrible, the abuse that he took. And he goes to Detroit, and you team him up with Lidstrom, and what a freaking defense pairing that is. And then bring in Brendan Shanahan, and okay. And it results in that first Cup win in '97, a 4-game sweep of the Flyers at home, and we just happen to have another clip here. Vic?
Well, Mike Vernon, it starts with him. He played terrific goal, Ron. The addition of Larry Murphy from Toronto was an unbelievable break for us to pick him up. We got good play from Yzerman, Fedorov, Shanahan, all our guys, and it's just fantastic. I can't believe it.
There's Scott North and Phil Pritchard bringing Lord Stanley's mug out right now. You see Scotty's on skates. That's kind of special.
Exactly, that's right. Well, we can hardly wait to drink out of that thing, Ron. I left the Islanders with 3 rings. I was missing one, so now I've got it.
Well done, Jimmy D.
Thank you. Thanks, Ron.
Well, that's number 4, first of 4 in Detroit. How did that feel at that moment, Jimmy? Obviously,
Well, I think
you
I
were in pretty good
described
state.
it pretty well. That was, I enjoyed listening to that interview just now because, of course, I forgot. But I think I described it pretty well. This was now my 15th year in Detroit. So you can see how much patience the Illiches had to have, the fans had to have, I had to have. And I would say that to Leaf people, okay? Don't be so quick to jump on the Leafs. Don't be so quick to criticize. It took the Red Wings 15 years to do it. Be careful what you wish for. You got a pretty good hockey team there.
Right. You'd hate to see them blow it up, right?
Exactly.
So you got 1.7 million people at the parade. It's a incredible party in Motown. And 6 days after the Cup win, there's that horrifying crash involving Vladimir Konstantinov and, of course, the club therapist and physiotherapist. And what kind of a toll did that take on the team?
Well, we're still sad about it 25 years later, but in kind of a funny way, I don't know quite how to put it into words. With our sadness, I think our team bound together and said, we're going to do it again, but this time we're going to do it for Vladimir Konstantinov. And that's exactly what the team did. And we used Vladdy Konstantinov as our inspiration to try to win another one. And we did in Washington. And he was there, unfortunately, this time on the ice in a wheelchair, but he was there.
That was a great moment when he was wheeled out onto the ice with the team, and you vowed to get it done for him, and that was pretty cool, and that second straight Cup was a lot of fun too. Now it's a few years, and then 2001, 2002, you guys make another big splash. Dominic Hasek, Brett Hull, and Luke Robitaille. How do you pull that off? Getting all those guys into under contract at once.
It started off by us making a big trade. In order to win a Cup, you really have to have great goaltending. And we knew that Dominic Hasek was the best goaltender in the world at that time. He wanted out of Buffalo. He had been there a long time. They had good teams, but unfortunately for them, they couldn't get over the hump, and he requested a trade. I was a friend of Darcy Regeers, who was managing Buffalo, and he knew what I thought of Dom, and he gave us an opportunity to make a pitch. And we would trade a very good forward, above average forward, Slava Kozlov, and a first-round pick for Dominic Hasek. And Hasek only had 1 year to go on a contract, so there's a little bit of risk that you might just get him for 1 year. Anyways, we brought him in, and of course, he was everything that I knew he would be. Now, Hull and Robitaille were really at the back end of their career. They were unrestricted free agents. And when we reached out to them on 1 year deals, they couldn't wait to get to Detroit. They knew what kind of team we had. They knew Yzerman and Fedorov were there. They knew that we had acquired Dominic Hasek. They knew that we had Lidstrom. So both Brett Hull and Luc Robitaille wanted to win a Stanley Cup late in their career. They came, and guess what? That's exactly what they did. So that worked out pretty good.
Yeah, it certainly did. And there was one more cup in 2008. Now, this is after the lockout and the salary cap, so this is a different kind of world now. But the Red Wings are still getting it done to prove that it wasn't just throwing money out there anymore. You could actually get the job done under the salary in a salary cap world, which is, to me, it's another feather in your cap. So how important was it to get Mike Babcock aboard?
Well, with Scotty leaving, you don't replace a Scotty Bowman, and we didn't replace Scotty. When Yzerman or a Lidstrom retire, you don't really replace them. You'd like to, but you can't. There aren't those kinds of people out there. By this time, I had made Ken Holland the general manager of the team, and he had done some work with Mike Babcock on our farm team, and he liked Mike. He believed in Mike, and so we went with Mike Babcock. Mike stayed with us for 10 years and did win a Stanley Cup for us, and that was in 2008. So, yeah, Mike did a good job. We made the playoffs all 10 years that he was there, and we did win our final cup and almost won again in 2009. We lost in a 7-game series. Otherwise, Mike would have had 2 cups and I would have had 5 there. But anyways, that's what happened.
So, what do you think? Why do you think it didn't work out for Mike Babcock in Toronto? Any idea why that didn't work for him?
Well, expectations. I think expectations. When they drafted Austin Matthews, he starts out his career with a 4-goal night. Holy cow! I've never seen anybody do that. And I'm gonna make a statement right now. I believe, and I've been watching the Maple Leafs since 1955. He's the greatest player in the Maple Leafs history. Some people may argue, but I've seen the Maple Leafs since 1955. I'm an old guy, so I can't tell you prior to 55, Silaps and Ted Kennedy and all those guys. But I can tell you nobody's been as good, and I'm including the Mahavliches and Keons, as this guy. This guy is a superstar, okay? And, expectations went off the board because of how the Leafs went from dead last, and within a year, we're really knocking on the doors. A team, they got Marner. Morgan Riley was a good draft. Kadri. They had actually been doing a pretty good job of drafting prior to Mike getting there. And Mike pushed those kids, okay? And they had terrific regular seasons, only unfortunately to get upset in 7-game series with Boston, I think twice, maybe Washington, if my head serves me right. So it's hard for me to know. I wasn't there. I don't know. I do know that Mike Babcock is a hard worker. He's a talented guy. He pushes the players. Like highly motivated people, he probably got on some people's nerves. But, as to why it didn't work out, that would be for Brendan Shanahan and Kyle Dubas really to know, because they were there in the mud puddle.
Right. Well, I mean, we've talked about a lot of your career here, so and the tremendous success you had, and the drafts have been phenomenal. The signings are great. So, in 2010, you're inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, and you took the opportunity to pay tribute to Mike and Marion Ilitch. Let's pick up that speech.
From the Norris family. Early on, we endured some particularly tough years, but you hung tough with me in spite of a lot of criticism at times, and the last 20 years have brought us all a ton of joy. I want to thank you, Mike and Marion and your family, for putting a lot of faith in me and hanging in there with me.
Yeah, it's sad that that they have gone, but that yeah. So that this is was a nice moment for you to acknowledge that.
Well, we go back to earlier in this program when, I was hanging on a thread in 85, 86, and a lot of owners would have cut ties with me. They would have. And it still goes on today in today's NHL. But something told them to stick with me. Don't just listen to what other people are saying. They stuck with me, and it turned out pretty good for me, for them, for the Red Wings, and I'm glad they did.
No question, and pretty glad they did too, Jimmy. You also had some kind words that night for Ken Holland, and last year he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. I saw you at the induction ceremony that night, and how cool was it for you to have Kenny, who is basically your prize pupil, inducted as well?
Yeah, actually a big thrill for me because Kenny joined me 35 years prior and eventually turned my job over to him. And we really had a fabulous friendship, working relationship, really thought a lot the same on 90% of the issues. Nobody agrees 100% of the time. Let's not kid one another, but 9 out of 10 times he and I understood each other, and I think he believed in me. I think he trusted me, and likewise, I did him. And so he had a wonderful run in Detroit, and I'm really hoping that he has a similar type run in Edmonton. But there again, he's in the middle of a build, and it's not easy.
Yeah, there's loud voices in these hockey mad centers, and you got to ignore the white noise, and so does management at times, right? And also in 2010, you were inducted with Cami Granato and Angela James. So it's a first class women were inducted. What was it like to be part of that, and what are your thoughts? Actually, Angela's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks. So what was it like to?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, it was certainly a first, okay, because women obviously had never been inducted, and here now I was going in as a builder with two very fine young ladies who had done a lot for women's hockey, and I got to meet them and spend some time with them and saw they were real hockey people for sure, and happy and honored to go in with them.
Is the NHL doing enough when it comes to in terms of inclusivity? Do you think the NHL is taking enough steps there?
Well, I would say to you, obviously they have and are. You see the things that have gone on, even in the last year. Um, they've stepped it up big time in that regard. You see it. It's obvious in a lot of the little things you see without me pointing out specifics, but yeah, they've stepped it up big time, and certainly are going in a good direction.
You mentioned in the book your 3 rules to success. They are: 1, make the good drafting of players your most important priority; 2, hire the best people available in all positions; and 3, remember that sports is a business and must operate that way. And that's always been a big part of your gig and what you felt is most important. You want to expand on that a little bit on the business end of things and operating that way?
Well, the business end of things I got from Bill Torrey, my mentor with the New York Islanders. When I was going there to learn how to become a general manager, and he allowed me to flap my wings and gave me terrific responsibilities. One of the things that impressed me about Bill was how concerned he was about ticket sales, how concerned he was about television ratings, how concerned he was about the business of the franchise. And most of the hockey people I had dealt with never talked about that. They just talked about the pure hockey, the coaching, the playing, the drafting. And that's what they were really supposed to do as general managers. But I saw that Bill had another dimension to him, that he did care and felt that the business of the franchise was his responsibility. And again, I think, well, I know because they've told me that Mike and Marian Ilitch, one of the reasons they stuck with me was they saw that I had my fingers in on the business part of it as well. From season tickets to TV to working on the business side. So they were getting two people. They were getting a manager of hockey, but also somebody that understood the business of sports and was interested in how we were going to make it work financially. You don't always get that in general managers, and I'm not critical of it because basically their first thing is building a hockey club and they have somebody else look after the business. But like Bill Torrey, I was able to do both. And I would say to you, the reason I'm still there 40 years later, it's because I still take part in the business part of the franchise.
Yeah, so much so that the Ilitches also made you senior vice president of their baseball team, the Detroit Tigers. And yeah.
Well, you're right about that. And the reason very simply was that the Tigers had fallen on hard times, both financially and on the field. Mike Ilitch came to me for help. And I said, Mike, I can't help you on the pure baseball side, but we can get somebody that can do that. And you and I will concentrate on the business. So at that time, we brought in Dave Dombrowski, okay, to run the baseball, and he did very well with 2 trips to the World Series, 5 divisional titles. And Mike and I concentrated on getting people into Tiger Stadium and later Comerica Park. And for the first time in franchise history, on 3 separate occasions, we drew 3 million people in Detroit. And generally, you would draw 1.5 million, 1.6 million. On 3 occasions, we were able to draw 3 million people. And Dave did a terrific job in building a pretty good baseball team. So that was a nice part of my career. I enjoyed that. It was a nice diversion and a real nice challenge.
And American League championships in 2006 and 2012. Congratulations on that too. So now you've never been married. Your mother was quoted as saying, "Well, Jimmy is married to his job." Uh, did you ever have a point where you were maybe close to getting married, or has this always been the deal that you decided you're going to make it a career thing and that's it?
Well, hockey was my life. And if you're going to get into something, I got into it with both feet, okay? And pretty much every waking hour it was hockey. It was pretty hard to establish any kind of long term relationship. And I guess hockey, now that I think back as an old guy, it just was more important for me. Everybody's different, Joe. And for me, I guess my mother was right what she told people. I was married to hockey. It sounds kind of crazy, but the fact is that's the way it was and is.
Well, I'm sure it's worked out pretty well, a little better than a lot of other relationships worked out, and as good as many, that's for sure. I want to say that it's an awesome pleasure to have you on the show, Jimmy, and to reliving some of your past, you know, one thing that struck me in reading the book and talking today is the way you're able to put your ego aside, and not necessarily take credit for everything. That it's all about hiring the right people, working as a team, and giving credit where credit's due, for that, the humility that you display in that, to me, is tremendous, and it's great.
Well, Joe, I thank you for those sentiments. I'm happy that I come across that way because, nobody does anything on their own. If you're going to have success in the sports business, you really have to surround yourself with good people. You've got to run it like a business. You've got to treat people properly. And I appreciate the fact that you acknowledge that I did have some of those attributes. And thanks very, very much.
All right, thanks for being on the show today, Jimmy. As a guest on Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show, we've got some fantastic Italian clothing for you from Classica Imports. We'll hook you up with our buddy Jeff, and next time you're in Toronto, we'll get you down there.
Very nice. That's very nice of you, Joe. Thank you. Enjoyed it very much.
All right, thanks, Jimmy. We'll have more sports when we come back.
Guests on Joe Tilley Sports receive a gift certificate from Classica Imports. Top of the line imported men's clothing. Check out the Classica Essential Collection now. Go to shopclassica.com.
Hey, this is Tommy Graisley, aka Tommy Gunn. I love two things, music and sports. And when I want sports, I go to the Joe Tilley Show. He gives me everything I want. It's a great show. Check it out for yourself. Joe Tilley Sports, coming up.
Good night. When I'm working out, I like to wear my Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show t-shirt. It makes me feel handsome and strong. If you want a t-shirt, support the show, click on the link below. Now, back to my workout. 1,761, 1,762, 1,763, 1,764. Addiction Rehab Toronto, Toronto's #1 alcohol and drug treatment center, saving lives, reuniting families. The only treatment center in the province to offer medical detox, treatment, sober living, and lifetime aftercare all in one place. Our unique and specialized programs are designed to equip our clients with the tools to successfully lead a life of dignity, respect, and purpose. Let us help save your life or your loved one's life. Call today for more information or to facilitate an intervention. 1-855-787-2424 or visit addictionrehabtoronto.ca. Joe Tilley Sports is brought to you by COSA, Central Ontario Standardbred Association, providing a united voice for harness horse people racing at Ontario tracks. Check out your benefits today at COSAonline.com and check out COSA TV on Facebook and YouTube for all the latest harness news and live action updates. Live racing year-round. Go to hpibet.com for all your wagering options. Become a member today, and your first bet is free. That's hpibet.com. Slow play. It's a slippery slope. First you go looking for that lost ball, and then everything goes sideways. There are a lot of golfers on the course. Make certain of your point of entry, look quickly, and move on. Remember, we're here for a good time,
Not a long time. Find anything, Bob?
Not yet. ShopClubLink.ca for golf equipment, demo clubs, trade-ins, golf apparel, men's and women's, custom fittings, accessories, all at your fingertips. ShopClubLink.ca.
4 3/4.
Okay, time for my Coastal Swiss pick of the week. Last week, my race got scrapped due to some nasty weather, but there was some great racing going on in Mohawk. The $37,000 final of the Blizzard Series for fillies and mares, appropriately named. Sylvan Filion did a great job with Belina coming from third over. Belina made a big move at the top of the stretch, shook off a challenge from the favorite Awesome Hill, and Belina cruised to victory. The 5 and 3 exacta returned $23. This week, I'm going to Western Fair Raceway in London for Wednesday night's 9th race, a pace for fillies and mares. Lorne House will guide the number 3 horse, Timagami Sealster, for trainer Scott McNiven and Dr. Bob Boyce, the owner. I also like the 368 exacta box. That's a $5 to win in place on the number 3 horse. So for all the racing updates, visit Costa TV on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Go to hpibet.com for your wagering options. Time now for the Rycom Wrap, sports news that's close to home. All right, a shout out to those Canadian Olympians. Max Perot earns a gold medal in snowboard slopestyle. Max has battled back from Hodgkin's lymphoma. Teammate Mark McMorris picked up the bronze. Michael Kingsbury just missed defending his title in moguls, but he'll take that silver. Isabel Weidman of Ottawa won bronze in speed skating at 3,000 meters. And the Canadian women's hockey team came from behind to bounce the rival Americans 4-2. Oakville's Breanne Jenner scored twice, and Renee Debian made 51 saves as the Canadians won a 4-2 to sew up top spot in the preliminary round. Two of the top teams in the NHL squared off as the Leafs and Hurricanes battled in Toronto. A potential conference final preview. Great game as the two goaltenders faced their former clubs. Austin Matthews beat his former mate Freddie Anderson twice, but left with a potential concussion. Hopefully he's okay. Mitch Marner scored 2 times as well, running his goal streak to 8 games. The tying goal and the overtime winner for Mitch as the Leafs win it 4-3. That's 6 straight wins as they head out west. Speaking of 6 straight wins, yes, he is. Fred VanVleet is an NBA All-Star. Not bad for a guy who is a former G League guard. He was a first undrafted Raptor to make the grade. He's only the 4th undrafted player ever to be named to the All-Star team. VanVleet and the Raptors have been on a nice little roll. It was 5 straight W's when they buried the Hawks in the weekend. Freddie V with 26 points, 11 boards. Pascal Siakam with 33. By the way, he was named the Eastern Conference Player of the Week for the 4th time in his career. And you can make it 6 straight, yes, as the Dinos rolled over the Hornets in Charlotte. They are at OKC on Wednesday night. The Toronto Rock have climbed back over the 500 mark. The Rock rolled into Philly, and they hammered the Wings. Now, listen, the Philly Wings jumped out to a 4-1 lead in this game before the visitors decided to wake up. Dan Craig scored 5 times. Tom Schreiber added 4 as the Rocks rolled to a 14-7 victory. Schreiber now has 19 goals in the season. The Rock improved to 4-3 on the season. They'll host Buffalo on Saturday. Well, Brooke Henderson continues to hang around at or near the top of the leaderboard of the LPGA Tour. Her next LPGA victory cannot be far away. She's making it close. Nick Taylor was top Canuck at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Okay, now let's see how I made out on that tough island green on the 6th hole at El Tigre.
And here we are with Joe Tilley. This is his nemesis hole. It's a beautiful island green, par 3, 6th hole.
No!
And, I think that happens like 94% of the time. But
Today's environmental tip: use less electricity. Power plants release harmful chemicals, including greenhouse gases. The process of extracting fossil fuels from the earth destroys natural habitats, Water usage to provide steam and cooling contributes to water shortages. Rycom, passionate people who turn complicated business problems into simplified technology solutions. For public and private sector real estate, properties, portfolios, and enterprise customers, optimize and future-proof smart buildings from the ground up. Smart Tech Solutions, the latest in fault locating, base building network design, managed services, cybersecurity, data analytics. Our fault detection will support all smart strategies, define projected outcomes for capital planning, and reduce environmental impact. Rycom, smart protection solutions. At Rycom, we're building a path to a smart and environmentally friendly future and a carbon-free economy.
And we want to thank all the folks who make this show possible. These are friends, trusted business associates, and all-around great folks. We want to thank them all. I highly recommend them all as well. And remember, the show is available on iTunes, Breaker, Radio Public, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, as well as the Spanglish Network, Zingo TV. Also, like and subscribe to the show on YouTube. Thanks once again to Jimmy Devellano, Jimmy D, for being on the show today. Thank you for watching, and join us next week when the undisputed Lennox Lewis drops by. We'll see you then. Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show is brought to you by
Brian Gribben Insurance Planning, helping you solidify your financial future.
At BGIP, what we do that's unique in the marketplace is we show people how to spend and enjoy their money in their early years of retirement without the fear of running out. Also, we're able to do this without you having to change financial advisors. Please look us up at bgip.ca today, and let's book a 30-minute phone call to see how we can bring value to you and your family in your planning.
Call Brian today for all your retirement needs. We did. 905-686-5678. Brought to you by MNP, a leading Canadian national accounting, tax, and business consulting firm. MNP proudly serves and responds to the needs of our clients in the private, public, and non-for-profit sectors. Through partner-led engagements, MNP provides a collaborative, cost-effective approach to doing business and personalized strategies to help people and organizations succeed across the country and around the world. With local offices in Oshawa, Toronto, Mississauga, Burlington, and more, our team is here to support you. Visit mnp.ca to learn more.